Hey, you have arrived at the process. My name is Dr. John Bush. This is lesson 75 for all you fantasy football fans here. We are trying to help you win your fantasy football drafts. That's why Professor's Classroom exists. My research shows about 60% of the show is your fantasy football drafts on average. And this is lesson 75. We've covered all the other positions, and this is now the wide receiver positions. Looking at 2015 to 2020, kind of a deep look at PPR draft positions, ADPs. So preseason ADPs versus end of season actual fantasy point per game production here. So you can try to correlate the ADP with the actual chances of landing a nice player, just again on average. So let's get started here. Please check the other lessons previous that will cover the other positions. So as with the positions, I've had tabular metrics here of ADPs. This is 1 to 30 from 2015 to 2020. And we have average of PPR fantasy points per game by that ADP position. So this is an average over the 6 years, right? And I marked the top 5 in kind of a red, deep red circle there. And you can see where those line up and where they don't. And over here for average, here's the top fantasy points per game. And probably unsurprisingly, the top, top 6 are found in the top 7 ADP over the last 6 years. So there's not a mystery here to where the good players are. The crowd is fairly good at finding them. Okay, so people, you know, badmouth ADPs, but it's a good place to start. It doesn't mean they're always right, but it certainly looks on average like that's the place to be. And so this allows you to at least have a foundation. This is that reference class forecasting approach that I talk about. This is not the end of your research. This is just the beginning, but you at least need to know what you're doing here. And if you are disregarding the top 7 wide receivers, then you better have good evidence that you should. Okay, are you better than average? Maybe you are. If you have a draft diary, then great. You do what you need to do and win. But I think we all need to pay attention to the wisdom of the crowds here. I colorize the metrics here. Purple is high and yellow is low. And clear means injury or complete failure here. So you can look, last year, for instance, the top ADP was 12. I think that might have been Michael Thomas. He just didn't work out, injury, COVID. So, nothing's guaranteed, but 4 of the 6 years, you would have got one of the top 5. So, in 2019, it was very close to the top 5. So, it's not a bad start. Again, I don't know if anybody could have predicted, injuries in the way the season went. But anyway, that's what the average looks at, and you can see the metrics here. And you can see, at least I can see, at about, I'm just arbitrarily saying at ADP 15. As I look across the data, it starts getting really slim at that point for grabbing a top 5 wide receiver. The public is fairly good at picking, and for this case, what is that? 30. So it's 15 ADP units from 16 to 30 ADP in 6 years. What is that? 80? Is that 80 players? And one, two, three, four. Four of the 80 were in the top five. Okay, that's not very good. So just realize that as the draft goes through, on average, the value of the players you're picking is going down. And in fact, it is not a linear process. The bottom really drops out there. And, clearly after about ADP 5 or 6, it starts going down. And by the 15th ADP, you've about found all the top players there at that point. Doesn't mean you can't get some good ones, and clearly there are cases where you can find one of the better ones, but it's a rarity, and I hope you're that good, because you're having to beat what is that? What did I say? 4 out of 80. What is that? 2 out of 40. So 1 out of 20. So was that 5%? Oh my goodness. So are you in that 5%? Everybody, probably 40% of pundits would say they are. Don't think so. Okay. The metrics say no. There's not many of us who are. And I've had some success, but I've had failures as well. The idea is, of course, trying to draft as many of the top wide receivers, top players in general, right, to have the best team in your league. I mean, that's pretty obvious what you need to do here. So that's the top 1 to 30. The 31 to 60 only, what is that? So is that 30 times 6, 180? 1. So over the 6 years, at ADP 31 and below to 60, you only had 1 out of 180 shot at grabbing a top 5 player. You talk about thin as hen's teeth, rare, yes. So regardless of if people try to tell you, and there's a lot of clickbait, oh, we got the secret one. What's their definition? It's not top 5. Okay, I don't care what they're saying. The metrics tell me it's not. Maybe they got some of these other ones that are not bad. Look, you can find them. But boy, there's a lot of yellow here. A lot of failed wide receivers here. So it's just not the case that certainly by the 31st down, you're just not going to, on average, collect a good wide receiver. The best you can do is, above average, then you're doing pretty good. So just you need to understand what you're up against here, and don't let it bother you. Okay, not this is everybody. Pros included are in this metric, these data. On average, they're not, any better than the wisdom of the crowd, right? So I like to do this little mental exercise here from 2015 to 20. Here's a table. And the question is ADP picks to try to draft the top 1 wide receiver. How deep do you have to go? Some years, the top. Okay, 1 year last year was number 2, and the worst years have been 7. So 2 out of the 6 years you had to go, your top wide receiver was in the top 7. But most likely it's in the top 1 or 2. Okay, 4 out of 6, right? 66% of the time, they are what the ADP says they are. Interesting. Look at the variation trying to find the top two wide receivers. 2, 3, 7, 7. Look at that. 15. So at least 7 to 15 is more closer to the average. So what is that? That median about 11. So it gets pretty dicey trying to grab, pick the top two. Top three gets worse at the 27th last year to grab the top three. Top four, top five can't even go down to 45th. And here's a bar graph of illustrating that conundrum here. And if you look at the yellow is 1, red, blue is 3, 4, and 5. And you see it really gets dicey here, to pick. In other words, it's not like the top 6 are going to be the top 6, right? That's just not, we haven't seen that much. There's a lot of variation in the 4th, the 5th. So if you're trying to find that needle in the haystack, it's probably going to be the 4th or 5th wide receiver that is going to be buried deep, but probably not later. I mean, I know 2016 was past the 27th, right? It was 45th. So probably the top 30 ADP, most likely, past that point, you're just not going to pull those guys out. It's just not going to occur. So you need to see that. So it just tells me kind of what we're really up against there. But on the other hand, it gives you hope that a couple of gems are out there in deeper in the ADP, right? Deeper in what is that? Round 2, WR2s, WR3s, maybe WR2s, right? Somewhere between the 24th and the 27th. So early WR3 territory, you might still grab one of the top 4 or 5. That's, I mean, to me, it looks like your research, your deep research needs to occur at about the 13th through about the 30th, maybe, or the 15th through the 30th, somewhere in there. I think I wouldn't try to parse who's 1 and 2. Okay. They're probably going to be in the top 6 or 7. Okay. It's these down here that are worth the dig for your research. So that's who you're looking for, is trying to pick these up, because they're going to be harder to find, but they are there. So it's multiple ways to look at. Harder to get, but they're there. Okay, it's not like, oh, you're wasting your time. You're not wasting your time. Probably after the 30th ADP, you probably are, as far as getting, that top 5 wide receivers. Just probably not going to be there. Okay, very rare. Rare. ADP this is another mental exercise. ADP positions needed to draft to acquire 3 of the top 5. So some years it's been great. 2015, all you had to do is pick the top 5, and 3 of those were in the top 5. So you had a good shot, right? Nice shot. 13th, 15th, 7, 15, 27. Last year was the worst year in 6 years. You had to go really deep to find those. So let's assume, on average, that it's closer to the 15th ADP. Okay, I don't think you can, find one of the top 3, deep. Okay, maybe the 4th or 5th choice. Okay, we just saw the previous. So I think my research is, 13th to 15th. I'm really focusing in that early second round. There's probably some good ones there that are being missed, that are being obscured. So take a look at this year's ADP after about ADP 10 to about 15 to 20 and just really try to get deep. Imagine as you're going through your research why this is one of the ones people are missing. What is stopping them? I mean, you can't predict injury, right? Obviously, if they're the second wide receiver and the first one gets hurt on the team, then they'll probably collect lots of targets and whatnot. Okay, you can't predict that. But there may be some other issues, things that are changing, new quarterbacks, new systems. So focus, I think, in that your research in that area. And like I said, down to about the 30th to maybe pick the 4th and 5th choices. So that's kind of the 15 wide receivers, say from 15 to 30 or 13 or 10, 20 wide receiver, whatever. Pick that sector and dig. That's where I think the metrics are saying dig for the research. Okay, so about the 15th and 10th, 13th, somewhere in there, you're probably going to get a real good one. And then maybe 2 of the 5 will be somewhere between the 15th and the 30th. Notice you have more to sift through there. So you might break your research up into those 2 sectors. That sounds reasonable. Should just kind of flow through and see what that is. Now remember, these ADP that I'm grabbing were in August. So some of these ADP may change a little bit. So people always try to pay attention to players that are moving up, I guess, higher in the ADP, I guess, lower in the ADP, I guess. To me, it's higher, lower means the better is higher, but I think they mean higher ADP now. So you're looking for lower ones that are moving closer to the first versus the 100th pick, right? So you're looking to see the movement. So who are we missing there? Maybe they're not in the top 30 right now. Maybe they're outside and they'll move up in August, training camps and other things. So just be aware that probably August you're getting your best shot and the best data, right? It's the most recent data we'll have to make our decisions on. So some people wait and draft later versus earlier. That's an advantage, certainly to that. Here is the end of season versus the preseason rankings here, and I did purple and orange are 19 and 20. Here's the yellow here. And you see that 2020, there were some good sectors. The 2020 had this region here was really better than the last 5 years. That's kind of interesting there. But some years have been really better here. Here, this region here, I don't pick the wrong color here. Let's try that. Yeah, this region. So I colored the 15, 16, 17, 18, those 4 years in the yellow. And these are trend lines here, by the way. So they smoothed out the bumps in the data there. And you see kind of a general degradation of the fantasy points there. 2019 was really strange. You see this kind of kick up in here, 50 to 60. So looks like you were some real issues compared to the other 5 years there. So that's a little strange. But that may, that's interesting. But 20 was back there, but they had a higher segment right in here. So could be just statistical anomaly, could be. But anyway, take a look. The data's not going up. If you couldn't trust the ADPs, it wouldn't be kind of a slow trend line. It would be wacky. Okay, and you don't see that. There's usually the higher ADP, the lower ADP, the better. The higher ADP, the worse on average, and that trend line is pretty much showing that pattern. Okay, so ADP continues to be the best overall average measurement we have in our drafting. Okay, regardless of how people say. It doesn't mean you follow it. It just means that's a guide. That's a starting point. That's all that means. Okay, nobody should be ruled by the average, right? You're looking to beat the average. You want to beat your league. You don't want to draft average. You want to draft above average. But you got to start somewhere. Okay, players are at their ADP for a reason. So you ask the question, why is that wrong? Or why is that right? And if it's wrong, is it wrong low? Is it wrong high? Okay, so that's your research. That's your job. Okay, try to do better than the ADP. Okay, and keep a track of that. Keep your diary. See if you can do that. Maybe you're better at tight ends than wide receivers, but find your strengths. Play to them. Okay. So soar with your strengths. Manage your weaknesses. Most of our society goes the other way, right? We throw all this resources in to manage our weaknesses. To soar with our weaknesses and manage our strengths, and we need to be exactly reversed. But there's some depth there to that, and probably a lot of politics embedded in just that sentence. That sounds logical, but a lot of people don't like if you carry that to the extreme, what that really says about life. Okay, I won't go any further than that, but I prefer to try to soar with my strengths. As I've done with the other positions, I figured out the average of the position, which is in the wide receivers about somewhere between 12 and 14 fantasy points on average, and I calculated the standard deviation, which gives you about on either side of the average. The total distance is about 66% of the population, assuming normal distribution, which I'm assuming it is. Anything above the purple box is above average. The extremes, that's good. Anything below is bad. So as you might predict, the skew is this in the lower ADPs. Here's the top 12. You get lots of goodness. In about 36 to 60, you get lots of suckiness right here. Those are sucky players. Not a lot good here. Take a look. So the time you get to the fourth and fifth round, not a lot above average. If you can hit average, you're probably doing pretty good. Okay. So there are some blips out there before the 36th, but it seems to me there's a big flip at 36 ADP just as you look across the landscape. So again, I believe this is the range you need to research to grab some of these good ones here. The ones that are being missed are these right here. So, most of the time you're in this range. You're wrong. But if you're good, you can snag some of these. You'll probably do really good in your draft and probably really good in your league. They're there. Okay, this is 6 years of data says they're there. Probably, if you really look at this, probably about right there, it really starts playing out. Was this about the 30th? So maybe, what is that? The 27th, 28th? That's why I chose 30 when I was talking before, right? I said about 13, 14, maybe 10, maybe 12. This is the area of you should spend a lot of research time on. People spend too much time here because most likely you're going to grab some good ones. I wouldn't spend a lot of time here. Most likely you're not going to grab good ones. At best, you'll get average. So the opportunity to probably win your league exists in pulling the 12th through about the 30th, 36th, the good ones, the ones that are going to beat the extremes. There's the opportunity, I think, is the metrics are saying there's your opportunity, and it has happened. It can happen. It is possible. So like, well, it's not, look in here. Nothing. Where am I putting my research time? I want some of these. I don't want to, in this pile. I'll find some that will get me average in here. So I'm managing my weakness in here. I'm trying to soar with my strengths out here, 12 to maybe 30th pick. Okay. So I'm trying to soar and find and do my research in that range right there. So I think when I use my general life philosophy, I think it applies in fantasy football as well. Find your strengths and soar with them. That's all I can say. Okay, and I wish our society would try to do that more. But, there's a lot of implications for that. You think about that, you realize the implications. Okay, so we move on from that. I think that's really nice. If we plot it uh, above or below average by bar graphs, the numbers, you can see it's pretty clear red is below average. And notice from about the 13th to about, and I said the 30th. Okay, so in this case, looks like about the 34th. Somewhere in here is your opportunity right there. There are players that are beating the average right in there, and there's some that are really good. I would not spend a lot of time parsing out these, okay? Just find those that are near the average. Manage your weakness there. Look at that. As far as I know, I haven't heard anybody put it quite like this, right? I don't know why, okay? Nobody wants to tell you the numbers. I guess they want you to be, blinded and listen to them because you have to listen to them. I'm trying to say, hey, teaching you how to fish, you go figure it out. Okay. So that's the end of the position run. I think it's really great metrics. This is why I do it, to find this kind of stuff, and really points me in the right direction. And the metrics guide me, not funny opinions, not fast talking words. Screaming loudly doesn't mean I'm right. Okay, old simple debate tricks. If I yell down enough people, I win the argument. Well, no, not really. But I guess that happens. Okay, this is the process. My name is Dr. Bush. We want you to soar with your strengths and manage your weakness. And if that doesn't piss you off, then come back and listen to some more lessons. See ya.